There we are. We're live on LinkedIn. Good morning, Chantal. How are you doing?
I'm good. My phone's just going off. Can you believe it? Best laid plans, right? I've switched it off. Hello.
Good morning. Right, so here we go. It is going to be World Menopause Day, I believe, on Friday. Is that right? And I also know it's Global Menopause Month as well. And so we're here tomorrow. We're here today, and that's the topic. So the headline is what men need to know about menopause. And we're going to get into like why I might be hosting this conversation in a little bit. But first of all, just to get us going, Chantal. Who's Chantal?
Who's Chantal? Oh God, that's a bit of a big question. So my name's Chantel Cross. I have just started my own company, Cross Check Consultancy, and we do HR and mediation services.
Fantastic. And you've also got some experience in the professional space about looking into issues relating to menopause as well, haven't you?
Yes. So I've been working in HR for 20 years plus VAT. I'm also 51 years old and I'm postmenopausal now. And I have put together training courses for managers as well. And I've just recently written a menopause policy as well. That I just feel very, very passionately about women in particular in the workplace, but generally, you know, it's not, excuse me, it's not just a woman's problem. It affects men as well. And I just want more, you know, people to be happier at work, really, generally.
Wonderful. So I know you've got loads of advice and loads of information to share as well. But just before we get into that, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do with these interviews. I'm going to talk about me a little bit, or rather as a way into why we're having this conversation at all. And so I'm a professional coach and I tend to work with people in the middle part of life. But also, I'm also 51. My wife is 50. And over the last couple of years, the whole issue of perimenopause and menopause has come out of nowhere in our lives and in my professional life to be a really, really dominant and important topic. And one of the things that I've realized with my wife and her friends and people that I coach is that all of these women are having to educate themselves in real time about perimenopause and menopause and HRT and testosterone and mood and all sorts of symptoms that you wouldn't necessarily know until you either experienced it or learned about it. And what's really shocked me actually is how hard it is for women to find this information out, and how often when they approach medical professionals, they're not as up on, you know, what might be going on as you would expect. So that's really surprised me over the last couple of years. And to watch women that I care about go through this and struggle to get any kind of support or information, and having to teach themselves this stuff whilst also suffering, you know, issues with memory and all sorts of other things, it made me realize, well, if they're struggling to find stuff out, then the men in their lives, like, what on earth do we know about any of this? And that's my reason for doing this, is that I've been trying to educate myself. Obviously, I am a man, so it doesn't affect me directly. And that's where we find ourselves today. So I really appreciate you giving the time, Chantel, and also your expertise. But why don't we dive in? I think it might help if you've said that you're quite happy to talk about your story with the menopause as well. That might be, you know, a good place to start.
Yeah. So I think I'm 51 now, and I think I started getting symptoms about 4 years ago, but I didn't really understand what was happening to me. I thought it was just stress, and I started to not be able to do my job. So I'm used to juggling lots of different pieces of coursework and, multitasking a lot and really having your head in a case and knowing where things are at. And I started to find that quite difficult. And also things like doing expenses, keeping dates and times. And the brain fog was just huge, and the symptoms. So I had problems with memory, a complete and utter loss of joy. I just couldn't be bothered with anything really. Things that I love, like cats, for example, couldn't care less about. And I started to lose my love of art as well. I also teach part-time once a week, art skills. And I was just so tired as well all the time, as well as really, and as a result of all this as well, a lot of anxiety, a lot of confidence issues, and, just inability to string a sentence together. I'd forget stupid things like the word for sky, it's just so annoying, so annoying. And after sort of, some quite difficult experiences at work, if I'm honest with you, I went to the doctors and they told me, I could barely think. I could really barely think. And the doctor sort of said straight away, she was amazing, which isn't everybody's experience. And she sort of said, no, I'm happy with you to go on HRT. But of course, in my mind, there's all that stuff about the cancer scare and didn't really know anything about it. And so I said, okay, well, let me think about it. And then I couldn't remember who I'd spoken to, how to get back in touch with her, what we were supposed to be doing. I just couldn't remember anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite common as well when you go to hospital anyway, or for any medical issue. It's really hard to take in what you're being told and process it and actually do something with it. So, and then more recently, I was still really, really tired, and I'd read somewhere, it was actually my sister-in-law had said, because she's going through something, similar, and she said that we lose 3 hormones. Why are we only replacing 2? Because at the time I had the gel pack, and I had progesterone tablets. And I couldn't remember to take the progesterone tablets 2 weeks a month. So I went back to the doctors and I said, look, I've never been great at taking pills. And she said, okay, you can take it once a day instead. So I can just about handle that. And then going back to my mother-in-law, I said, oh, well, maybe I'll look into testosterone. And my brain fog was a bit better by then. And it took me 3 months to get testosterone. So it was about a year ago. I posted on LinkedIn. I had 2 doctor's appointments, 2 consultant appointments, a blood test, a 3rd visit to the consultant to get the prescription, because that was going to take 2 weeks. And then I had to get 2 trips to the doctors to get the prescription, and then they'd run out everywhere. So then I had to go to 4 pharmacies, 2 in person. It was just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Women are losing their jobs over this. 1 in 10, I believe, don't work or lose their jobs because of the menopause. There's 60,000 women in the UK, I believe, at the moment who are not working because of menopause. And what gets me is that there are reports out there that mean that it's actually economically the return on investment for every £1 extra spent on research into women's gynecological and menopausal symptoms would get an £11 return on investment. I mean,
amazing.
Why aren't we just doing it?
Oh, well, yeah. I've got
Sorry, that was a bit of a rant.
That's absolutely fine. I think it's really helpful for people to know. I just remembered I forgot to say something to people who are watching. By the way, if you're new to LinkedIn Live, we can't see you, but you can see us. And we also, if you post comments underneath what you're watching or questions, we can see those as well. But we can't reply to them. But I can read them out if you've got any questions. And thank you to Marcy Walker, who's already said happy to be here with us this morning. Hi, Marcy. Nice to see you. Thank you for being with us. What you've described there, I think, is like some of the, the symptoms that people might be familiar with, even from like Belinda's just said here for the rants and the information. So thanks, Belinda. I think you might get both. You've described a couple of the classic symptoms that people, I think in general awareness, might hear terms like brain fog and stuff like that, and then started to talk about the hormone stuff. And I think most people I think are aware that it's affecting hormones, but what's really struck me is some of the unusual symptoms that the women in my life have come across. And I'm sure my wife Amy won't mind me saying this as well. Like for about 2 years ago, she had huge problems with her shoulders, was seeing physios, seeing doctors, couldn't raise her arms up above her head and all sorts of stuff. Really thought it was frozen shoulder, going to be real problems. It turns out many months later, that's a symptom of the menopause, that you get things like that. And the list is quite extraordinary. So women in that period of life are going through a hell of a lot internally, aren't they?
Oh, it's just nuts. I mean, I keep reading everywhere that there's 34 symptoms of menopause. I beg to differ. When I was researching my menopause policy, I've managed to put together probably over 60 symptoms, and I think the list is still growing. So some of the less well-known symptoms is electric shock. The feel, I know. And can you imagine, like, you're going for a nap and all of a sudden, oh my God. Fear of driving at night. Frozen shoulder was one I was going to mention. Burning tongue, bleeding gums, bloating, palpitations. There was a podcast I was listening to recently. I think his name is Ali Man or Ali Mer or something like that. And the lady that he was interviewing had palpitations so bad they thought she was having a heart attack. Just after the last time that they'd spoken, and she had gone to hospital thinking she was having a heart attack. Restless legs, vertigo, reflux. These are just some of the ones that I've come across. So, and also the weird thing about symptoms, very handy again, is that you can have one symptom today and you might not have it again, or you can have the same symptom for multiple days, or you can, it's just odd.
Yeah. There's people in the comments saying here, we've got Tracy Spiller Burnett saying 34 indeed equals many, many, many more exclamation marks. Yes, Tracy. I think actually listening to your list there, Chantel, I think all of those, I know a woman that has told me at least about, all of those and more. And Jackie is saying, I left my job in London while suffering from menopause symptoms, didn't realize it at the time. So please, it's been discussed more. And I think, Jackie, that's something that really struck me is the huge impact it has on women's ability to function, and a big part of that is doing their jobs. And I just want to bring you back to something that you said there, Chantal, about the brain fog thing and memory and being able to juggle tasks and things like that. I can remember conversations a couple of years ago where women that I know were saying, I think I've got early onset dementia. And that wasn't a joke. That was like, I really feel like I'm losing my mind. And it's shocking to me that as you kind of become the generation that I guess we are, and you move through that's when you find out about this stuff. And it's only people like, Davina McCall is quite well known, isn't she, for shining a light on this, and I think doing a great job. But do you feel like it is just a kind of generational thing? You don't find out about it until you get to this age? Or do you feel like something is changing and the conversation is actually starting to happen?
I think there's definitely, obviously, a lot more awareness, but quite frankly, we need money. We need money in the research. The economic case is there, but quite apart from anything, it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Excuse me. For 51% of the population, why are we having this conversation? Come on.
Yeah. I completely agree, and I think maybe just there's a question there that I'll just respond to. Daniel Karim saying, interesting topical subject. Is it being recorded? Yes, it is, Daniel. As soon as the session is finished, LinkedIn will post the recording below, but it'll go on YouTube and stuff, and I'll share links in a few days' time as well. Let's just shift tack a little bit into the what men need to know bit, and also you, I think, been thinking about what support men could provide, or what awareness they might need. So something that really amazed me when I read it recently, and then it made sense when I thought back, is that there are quite a lot of big law firms now in the country that if a woman rings up to initiate divorce and she is between the ages of about 45 and 52, they first do a menopause consultation, and they say, look, how are you getting treated? And they go through that, and they recommend that's the first point of discussion. That blew my mind when I heard that, but it actually made a lot of sense when I think about conversations with male and female friends in the last couple of years, and clients as well, who this becomes an issue in the sort of sanctity of the coaching conversation. It's a big deal. So first of all, the thing about that divorce, how do you think about that?
I think that's entirely accurate. And I think, my husband's been amazing, but he knows when to leave me alone, put it that way. But it's funny you should mention that, because I actually read, there was a report by Dr. Newsom, who is very, very, just type in Newsom podcast or whatever, and you'll get like over 200 episodes on the menopause. So it's a really good resource. And she did a report with the Family Law Menopause Project, along with Newsom Health Menopause Society. And they showed that the menopause and perimenopause has a huge impact on relationships. And they found that 73% blamed menopause for a breakdown in their marriage. I think there was over 1,000 people interviewed. Wow. And 67% claimed menopause increased domestic abuse and arguments as well. But of those respondents, 86% did not feel comfortable raising the issue. And of all those lawyers, 97% said the lawyer didn't raise or explore how menopause had affected that relationship. So there is a very real correlation there, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's why I think men really need to care about this. This is all their relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said at the top of the conversation, that if women are having to find this stuff out, and I know there's a lot of people who have registered for this today. So interesting. I'm going to tell people who are watching. So I have somebody wonderful who helps me with my my work and work on LinkedIn, somebody called Charlotte, and she does some of the invitations for things like this as well. And I said to her, like, Charlotte, this is one, see the title, this one's, when you're inviting people, it's, I guess, predominantly let's target men. And she came back to me and said, Stephen, I don't think that's right. And pointed out that, well, actually, my motivation for this conversation, I've already explained. But she said, look, there's a lot of women need this information as well. And so if that's the case, and by the way, I think Chantal was absolutely right. And when I looked down the people who'd said they were coming, I think at least half, probably more, were women. And that tells us that the women are hungry for information and advice and community and feeling, I think it's wonderful of you to be so open about your own experience and to put the time into this. Not everybody feels comfortable to do that. But if you're doing that and they're feeling like that, the men in their lives are like, what on earth do we know about it? So let's get into that. Like, what do men need to know? And let's take it from there.
So I think there's about 5 different areas that would be really helpful that I've identified. And the first is to I think you put it really, really well when you did your motivation for doing this, about when you're in it, it's really hard to recognize that those might be the symptoms that you're going through. So if men can really educate themselves, so the first one really is to educate themselves and find out more about it, because they might actually spot the warning signs earlier than
Right.
the woman who's actually in it, So it's about educating, and a part of that role as well, I think, is signposting, but also advocating. I mean, I'm quite to the point, as you've probably gathered, and I don't pull any punches. So I can advocate for myself, but many women can't. They can't think straight. They're so exhausted, and they don't understand what's happening to them. So if we've got the support of people nearest to us, either, whether it's your manager at work or your therapist or your brother, whoever, anybody who's close to you, if they can see what's going on, recognize it, and help you advocate to get the support you need, I think that's really worth the weight in gold. And really, I mean, obviously communication is the key as well. Perhaps I think another way of spotting the warning signs as well is thinking, why is life so hard right now with you? What is out of the ordinary here? It's kind of spotting when, well, that's not like you, or that's not, I'm not used to hearing that or seeing that. Oh, and also stop saying stuff to wind us up, really, like, okay. Like, well, my mother got on with it, or
that's not helpful.
It happens to all women. Or are you still going through it, or how much longer? Those kind of helpful things. Yeah. Just don't say it. And really just sort of listen and encourage us to talk about it, really. And something in relationships that I was, because, of the point that you made about the breakdown in relationships, and how law firms are now asking the question about menopause early on in divorce proceedings, is also about in with the communication. It's also about encouraging non-sexual touching as well, because the relationship, I think, confidence is a big thing with women in terms of they don't know what's going on with their body. But the other thing to be aware of, and I really feel sorry for you, is that apparently touching can also spark hot flushes. So
Okay.
it might be that a woman might not want to be touched, but it depends on, on the woman and what her symptoms are. But
Yeah,
I think feeling safe and able to talk to your significant other is worth its weight in gold.
that's great advice. I think I'm just reflect back a little bit. The challenges that some of the, like my male friends, have begun to talk about, because I've tried to encourage conversations with guys about this, to say, to be the one that raises it. I mean, I'm not a great one for going to the pub, but if I am with like male friends, just to mention it, to talk about it, say, is it affecting your lives? And it clearly is. And I think just to maybe talk about the male perspective on it, it's extremely confusing to be in a relationship or to have friends who change and not to know why. And often as well, like, because it's stressful for the women involved, all of these things, when you are, I can't imagine what it must feel like. I mean, I've seen, people that I know, I've seen women, like, the physical effect on occasion is striking, but that is happening emotionally, an awful lot of the time, and making the woman feel not herself and confused and, sad and potentially depressed. I mean, I know it has, a lot of women suffer suicidal ideation and all kinds of stuff that's happening. And then, but you're watching that happening, and on occasion, the feelings are directed towards you without without any reference to why it might be happening. So it feels like it's you. It feels like, well, what have I done? Do you know what I mean? And that is really confusing. So I think that's why it's so important that we have these conversations, so that if you just recognize it, I mean, I'm useless. Like, in the moment, so often I get it wrong. It's like I think it's about me when it's not about me, or I let my own baggage get in the way. I'm not an expert at this, but at least if I know, I can go back and go, oh, sorry, I made a mess of that, or that wasn't very thoughtful, or whatever. But it's not easy.
It really isn't, and I think that's a real point. I mean, men very often must think that their partners are having an affair, or if there's no intimacy, and I totally get that. It can be really, really difficult for the men in your lives, especially when you don't know what's going on. So that's why I'm sort of recommending that everybody just gets as much knowledge as possible. But it is incredibly difficult for men, and that's why I wanted to do this. Sorry, one of my symptoms is losing the ability to talk articulately. So
you're doing brilliantly, absolutely brilliant. But we're almost at time anyway. I just want to, so we can start to wrap it up. There's somebody, a LinkedIn user there with saying, I wasn't aware I was going through the menopause at the time my marriage broke down, just coming out the other side 8 years later. I mean, that's really sad. I'm really sorry to hear that. We're glad to hear that you're coming out the other side. And then Belinda, I think, referring back to you saying about unhelpful comments is another one. You're too young for that. And I certainly know, I've heard several women tell me that, like, GPs have told them you're too young. And there we go. There's an education piece to be done in society in general.
So I did hear on a podcast recently that 4 out of 10 med schools don't include it on their curriculum. I don't know if that's going to change, but I think it should.
Wow. Well,
and also there is four stages of menopause that I'm aware of. So there is early onset menopause, and this can happen for whatever reason, and that is 1 in 100 apparently have early onset menopause, and that's considered to be early if it's before the age of 40. And then there's medical or surgical menopause, where it's brought on by surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or if you have a hysterectomy, you will immediately go into menopause. Perimenopause is the period of time just before the period of time leading up to menopause, and that can last 4 years. And sometimes the symptoms in perimenopause can be worse than in menopause. Natural menopause is when 12 months have elapsed, when you no longer have periods. And then there is postmenopausal, which is where the symptoms can continue for up to 10 years, I believe, or even I think 3% experience symptoms for the rest of their life.
Oh gosh. It's something we should be talking about, isn't it, Chantel?
I know.
It's a big deal.
But I think there is lots as well that you can do. There's and providing. I mean, in this menopause policy, I have actually put together sort of bit of information sources. I've also put together some common adjustments in 4 different areas, as well as the symptom checklist. So, and also a guide as well for women to take to the doctors. So sometimes you don't, it's really hard, as I explained earlier on, to get the treatment that you want. HRT isn't for everyone, but you need to have the information to make the decisions yourself. So I thought that would be helpful, as well as a risk assessment as well. So,
wow, you've done a lot of work.
So it's kind of like a tool. So it's more than a policy, it's more than a procedure. It's kind of this is a toolkit for hopefully getting what you need to help your symptoms.
Yeah. And you're happy to share this with people who reach out to you?
Yes, I am. If you want to just drop me a line. I do need to just finish a couple of bits on it. But if anybody wants to drop me a message on LinkedIn and just say, I'm interested in your menopause policy, I'll be happy to share that with you.
Fantastic. And for people who are watching as well, what I always do at the end of this is I'll make sure I message you all. Thank you for registering for this. So I'll make sure that we get links. That'll probably come in a few days' time. But there's another side to you as well. Like we finish on this, there's more that you've got going on that you could share with people as well.
Oh yeah, loads. I'm really, as I said earlier on, I'm really passionate about making people happier at work. And there's a piece of legislation coming in on the 26th of October where all employers must take proactive steps to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. Now, this is not as simple as you might seem, because it involves a bit of tailoring to the business and a bit of thinking around the subject. So I've got an anti-harassment toolkit, which will save a qualified HR professional around 75 hours of work. So it's really worth its weight. And it includes a bullying and harassment policy, an equal opportunities policy, 1 session of training for your staff remotely on their responsibilities, amongst other things. I've got survey questions, posters, risk assessment, all sorts. And I'm just really passionate about, I hate that word actually when people say that, but I really am very passionate about people looking after their staff. That's why I got into HR.
Yeah,
so
wonderful.
I'm also in talks with two organisations to get reduced rates for confidential reporting lines as well. Yeah, one are called Stamp Out and the other are called Working in Confidence. But if you are interested in that as well, drop me a line. I can send you details as well as discount codes. And I would love to work with you on that.
Wonderful. So I'll make sure that when we contact everybody afterwards, and we'll put all the details of both of these things in so everybody can access it really easy. But everybody, please, if you're not already following or connected with Chantel, make sure you click the button right away and reach out, send her a direct message, because I know we've only had a short amount of time and you've provided an astonishing amount of value, great stories, great anecdotes, really fabulous data and information that helps everybody to understand this topic a lot better. And I know that's just a fraction of what you know about all of these topics and more. So if you've not connected with Chantel, make sure that you do it straight away. So I think we should wrap it up here. But Chantel, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been even more than I hoped it would be for me personally. I do my best to kind of educate myself, but I've learned a load again today. And I find that as well, just by like having these conversations, every time I have a conversation, even with somebody that's not as informed as you, I'm educating myself, I'm learning, I'm questioning, I'm figuring out things. That we've got some amazing comments, and you might not have seen them, but go and have a look later on, because there's a lot of support. We just had one from Paul. Thanks for a great and informative session. Samuel, referring back to your pack, I think, says sounds incredible, clap emoji. Marcy is saying thank you, Chantal and Steve, for this. I've been in postmenopause for over 5 years now. I'm still dealing with it and learning about how to live with it. This call definitely contributed to continuing my learning. So there we go. I just want to say thank you so much. I know you've put a huge amount of time into this and a lot of yourself. I know you've never done this before, but you are a fabulous guest for this kind of thing. So if anybody's watching that does this kind of thing, I'm sure they'll be reaching out and thinking, oh, I could get Chantal to come and
don't
talk as well.
Cry. That's another thing.
I host these conversations at different topics every single week. I just invite people who I think are interesting. I've got something interesting to say, but until we sit down, we don't know where the conversation is going to go. And this has been an absolute pleasure. I think it's brilliant. And it's going to go on YouTube, so hopefully more people will be able to benefit in the future. And I've got just one last question for you.
Yeah.
Can we do it again?
Oh, I would be delighted. Honestly, it's been an honor and a pleasure. I can see totally why you're a coach. You're amazing at it. And right back at you. If you're not connected to Stephen, connect. And sorry, I'm crying. And go to him for all your coaching needs, I think, because you've just got such a lovely way about you. Really curious, supportive, and most importantly, kind.
Oh,
and I
that's
really gravitate towards those kind of people.
That's very, very kind. I'm touched, and I will accept that. Thank you very much. Right, I actually have to run pretty quickly because I'm off to a menopause event in Leeds.
I know you are. I wish
Join
you.
It's a menopause day for me today, which I'm really looking forward to. We're going to find out even more from a panel. But last time, thank you very much, Chantel. And thank you all for watching, everybody. And we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Bye.
Bye.